McKnight has a rich background working with native plants and developing a breadth of knowledge. She started Altlawns to offer neighbors advice on native plants instead of lawns. And Altlawns continues to attract more people, including notice from Richland, the city of Richland. Next, Sara Nelson will talk about the Corcoran Pollinator project started in 2017. Sara is currently completing her master's degree in conservation science with a thesis on grazing for buckthorn management. Her studies, along with a philosophy degree, combine to attract people ready to plant back natural areas. Sara is joining us online. And last, we will hear from Daniel Schultz on his program, Garden for Wildlife, with the National Wildlife Federation, also beginning in 2017. Daniel became inspired by Doug Tallamy at a Wild Ones conference, eventually becoming a master naturalist in Minnesota. With his garden experiences and a business in real estate, Daniel helps people connect to place. And after talking with Ava, Sara, and Daniel, I'm inspired to work with my neighbors. And I feel you will too. So please join me in welcoming Ava, Sara, and Daniel.
Thank you, Ren. I'm gonna just get adjusted here. All right. So my group is Altlawns of Richfield and Bloomington. And I thought, yep. Altlawns of Richfield and Bloomington. So I moved into Richfield 2016 in the winter, right before Christmas. So 2017 was my first year here. My first years living at the house, I was also taking care of my mom with Alzheimer's and working full time. So I was looking for something to do that wasn't out and about in the community. And I started first on Nextdoor, working, trying to connect with people online, and that platform didn't work so well. So I went to Facebook, and the first couple of years we had 15 people, I think. And now we are at 296. We just got our 296th member tonight. And that was organizing, slide, I'm gonna change. Okay, so what motivated me to create it was, as I said, I was at home and I was used to volunteering through the water steward program, and couldn't do that kind of volunteer anymore. And I was already helping my friends connect with their yards and create habitat, answering questions with them, sketching out their yard and saying, hey, you could plant this there, you could do this then, and doing on-site visits with them as well. And on Facebook, I was noticing all of our neighbors were asking, what do I do about this? And what do I do about that? And I'm gonna kill everything with pesticides. And so I started seeing that our area needed some assistance, and my neighbors needed some assistance. That one of the things also in moving into Richfield was that I noticed that the watershed, right in 2016, Minnehaha watershed stopped working one-on-one with cost share programs with residents. And Richfield and Bloomington has this other watershed that kind of isn't a topographical watershed, it's a government watershed and run out of the city. So we have, we're working, I saw a need to work with residents and also support residents in connecting with the cities and also connecting with the watersheds and supporting those people in the cities and those organizations that are doing good work. I think I'm gonna say when that top thing, diminish heat island effect, I was sitting in my living room with huge, the shadows were bouncing off my walls of my 6-foot flowers outside my window. And in California, the fires were burning. And I was just so grateful to be part of change in my neighborhood. So that's that little bullet point there. And the personal challenges, I'm going to say that you're going to hear from some, well, you heard the background of Daniel and Sara. I am self-trained. And so there's part of me, yes, I help my friends and I answer questions to them. But when I'm around my ecological friends, I know so little. So I really had to make that hurdle about, yeah, what I know is enough. Who I am is enough. And that is one thing that I really want to share with you all, that you are enough. You are the change. And whatever you can do, my skills are different than Daniel's, different than Sarah's, and different than yours. And you have your own special skills that you'll bring to your community. And I'll add that the people that connect with you will bring their own skills. And I'll drop a few lines at the end about what people are doing in our group. I was doing family care. I've got my own health limitations, and COVID was a limit on all of us at the time. But it turned out to be that in 2021, that's when we really blossomed. And I was doing a lot of networking online in Facebook groups, and we did little mini hellos in the neighborhood and in our yards. Another challenge is clover, honeybees, and cultivars. I'll just quickly say that's a lot of people are feeling like, hey, I'm being ecological. I have honeybees, or I'm putting clover in my yard. And that's always a challenge to welcome in and be excited, and at the same time educate, because those are three things that may not be adding to the habitat and aren't actually adding to the habitat. But it's a conversation that we have a lot. So one of the first things we did was a No Mow May sign. The U of M bee lab came out with this beautiful graphic, and we printed 30 signs, got them put up in our mainly Richfield. I think some went into Bloomington, some went out to Mound, and few other places, but most of them were here in Richfield. And we made them affordable. We put a free pollinator graphic on the back from Pollinator Alliance, I think it is. And so that was a step toward ordinance change in our city, which is likely to be happening this year. Then another thing that we did was plant distribution. We got 450 plants into our community that wouldn't have gotten there before through the Twin City Wild Ones sale. We took 2 vehicles and traveled up, picked up the plants and distributed through at my house, and had Altlawns members help travel, get the plants, and help with the sale. I also gave away 150 plants in that whole season, that first year, plants that I had developed. Not forwarding it there. Santwana and Santwana is one of our Altlawns members, and she has become a sustainability commissioner now for the city of Richfield. We also have 2 other members that are Richfield sustainability commissioners, and 2 members from Bloomington that are commissioners as well. She and I went out, we're used to doing community engagement, and we went out on National Night Out and connected with about 100 or 10 different groups, handed out information, soft landing information, leaves, kind of some basic information about our group and things that they could do in their lawns. The couple that you see in the back are a couple that have a CSA in Richfield that were facing ordinance changes because somebody had complained about their yard, and we supported them as well. We had our first annual Altlawns Learning Expo, and this was really fun. Our Twin City Wild Ones volunteers came to help us, and we were so grateful to that. Michelle, you can see here, Heather Holm was there, and she's talking with Michelle, who was an early supporter of me. Sometimes we did live Facebook events where it was just Michelle and me doing some winter sewing projects. And Audubon came, and the other picture here is Free Farm Market. Richfield has a lot of people doing really cool things, and one of our members, two of our members have free farm stands, and they'll be doing classes in this spring to help people learn how to grow food. And so one of the things that we've done also is on-site visits, and they're going to pick up this spring as well, where we walk land of somebody's house and have some other members come. And so everybody's learning together what can get changed on that land, whether it's managing stormwater, where can gardens go. And the other picture, the first picture up above is a couple, his grandfather owned their house. So he grew up gardening with his grandfather in Richfield, and now they live there, and it's a very art-filled garden. And then the second picture is Alicia, who's here in the audience, Alicia and Peng, that they built soft landings around the trees. And that was something that came out of Heather Holm, her work and greening, neighborhood greening. And we have maybe a handful of people who did this that I know of from our group this past year. Now, Alicia was out in her yard, and somebody recognized this picture from our Facebook group, and they got to be neighbors talking and saying, hey, you're part of Altlawns. Yep. So not only are we changing our outward environment and habitat, we are changing our community and connecting with one another. I'm just going to really quickly say 4 other things that we're doing and then hand it over to Daniel. We have sold 200 seedlings already this year, trees, native bushes, and trees that are going into people's yards. We have a rain barrel workshop that's going to come up. We are, as I mentioned, doing the food growing workshops. And tonight, Richfield is meeting about their tree replacements for the boulevard trees from the emerald ash borers coming down. And we have affected change on, or hope to be affecting change on that conversation currently as this presentation is going on. So that is our group. I look forward to questions and answers, but I first of all look forward to hearing from Daniel and then Sarah. Or Sarah and then Daniel.
And while we're moving over to Sarah, who's on Zoom or online, I just wanted to let you know what the format of tonight's program is. That we have each speaker first present details on their presentations or on their projects. And then we'll have a panel discussion. Because I have found this to be most effective with the Nobel Conference, in that the questions that were asked were really astute, got to more details. And then following that, it is open to everyone here and online. So please be sending your questions by chat. And we will go back and forth. And so I will turn it over to Sara now. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Hi, I'm Sara, and thanks so much everyone for having me. And that was so awesome, Ava. I'll just tell you quickly about what we've been up to over in Corcoran neighborhood. So Corcoran Pollinator Project is a neighborhood pollinator gardening initiative. We started in 2017. And the basic idea is that neighbors help each other install pollinator gardens, and we have a pay it forward system. So if you receive a garden, we ask you to help install 2 other gardens. And so far in the last 5 years, we've installed more than 60 gardens. More than 100 neighbors have been involved. We've grown more than 100 native plant species. We started growing our own plants from seed, and we did thousands of them. During COVID, we stopped doing so many communal work days, but we did share plant kits with people. And we have also set up a pollinator garden tool library at Corcoran Neighborhood Organization that features this awesome sod cutter. So anyone can just independently borrow these tools for free to make their own pollinator garden. And I just wanted to share a couple things about how we got started, what our model is, how we've grown, and couple reflections on what I've learned from this project. So the background of this project is that in 2017, a few different things were going on. Kind of some of these were sort of self-interest and some were kind of more about concern for the world. But the rusty patch bumblebee had just been listed as an endangered species, and we were finding out how important our urban neighborhoods are as remnant places where this bee is hanging on and needs support. I was doing a biodiversity survey job looking at plants for the U of M in really pristine kind of remnant prairies as well as in the city. And so I was just having a lot of emotions about how much has been lost biodiversity wise from our landscape, and thinking about like, how could we replace some of that in the city. Also that year, I had just moved into my first adult rental with a yard. And I really was excited about gardening, but was finding out how expensive it is to buy plants one by one. And and what? Sorry. And this is a picture from my block in Corcoran neighborhood. So you can see like my house didn't have much of a garden, and there's a lot of yards in our neighborhood that didn't have much of a garden, and seemed like, other people besides me could have been in the same situation of like needing plants. And I was aware that people were sharing plants on Nextdoor, and it seemed like an opportunity to maybe formalize that a little bit and help everybody out. And let's see, I'm gonna just move this little box. So our model, I had like worked on organic farms and stuff and been exposed to this idea of a crop mob. So the idea is that in a lot of different farming communities, there'll be some big project that somebody needs done. So all the surrounding neighbors and farmers come for one day to like raise a barn or something and get fed lunch. And then the next month it's somebody else's turn to have all that labor. And so it seemed like a really cool model to use for this kind of neighborhood pollinator garden situation. So that was kind of in my head as like a model that could be used for this kind of thing. And we ended up setting it up that people could get a garden if they helped with 2 other gardens. And kind of the same thing, we didn't make people provide lunch, but asked them to provide snacks and water. And our organization provided all the other supplies and plants. And let's see. So to get this started, our very first event was, and just to kind of gather people together, was we had someone from the Bee Lab come and give a presentation about backyard pollinator habitat. About 8 or 10 people came. And from that group of people, we kind of floated the crop mob idea. And we had one person in the group said, oh, we can do that in my yard. And another person said, oh, we can get plants from my yard. And so that became our first test of this model and of how to do it. And from there, so we had our first garden installation. And from there, we did outreach at the farmer's market. We had flyers, we did stuff on Nextdoor, and just sort of started collecting people who were interested. In our first year, we did 10 of these little gardens. Here's some pictures. And it actually, like, organizing this can be, I feel like, pretty simple. So like we just had a CPP email account, a Gmail account. We set up a Google list and we had a Google form so people could use this. People would get in touch with us and say, hey, I'm interested. And we would send them this form on the right to say like the details of when they're available and stuff. And then we would just send invitations out to our Google group. In the beginning, all of our capacity was a little smaller. We did a lot of small installations with just a few plants. And then like later on, as we grew, we had more people involved, more plants, we did bigger. This was somebody's whole hill of their front yard. And we also started out getting donated plants from neighbors, including a lot of Wild Ones members, and would just dig up excess plants and then replant them, which became a lot of work as we started doing more gardens. So over the years, we started growing our own plants from seed. So in the second year after we got started, we did 250 containers. And then later on, the next year, we did a party with 500 pots. And then the next year in 2020, we did about 10,000 plugs from seed. And that year, we also got a Lawns to Legumes grant with a couple other partner organizations. So our capacity really expanded and we got funding to do a lot more. So we also got trees and shrubs. We got a lot of plants that we were able to purchase. And a cool thing that also happened that year was we were rewarded by one of our volunteers had a rusty patch bumblebee nest in their back steps. And we had all been looking out for rusty patch bumblebees. And it was just a really cool moment where we're like, oh, it's, all this stuff we've been doing, it's working. We found these rusty patch bumblebees and the U of M came out to study them. And it was just a really cool sort of like indicator, like, oh, hey, it's working. I think this model is really cool and could be used in a lot of places. I feel like we have made a significant quantity of habitat, but also there's all these community benefits. We've generated a lot of local knowledge over the years. And I think there's something really special about coming together in this way to care for nature as like the focal event in a way that's really celebratory and fun. We've gotten a lot of people hooked on native plant gardening where they're maybe somebody got a small garden from us to begin with. And now this picture in the upper right is a participant who then decided like they weren't going to plant their whole backyard in native plants too. And then we've had some spin-off groups. We've had some older neighbors who need kind of ongoing help. And because we had a big group of volunteers, like a reservoir of volunteers, we're able to connect them with people to help do some of the maintenance over time. So I think that these are all kind of some of the things that are nice about this model. And it's really cool to walk around now and see all of the beautiful gardens that have been growing. I think we have found there's like a lot, as we've grown, there's been a lot of things come up about like, okay, well, who is doing all the organizing work and is there any compensation? How are we making sure that everybody in the neighborhood feels included and involved? Do we need to have some kind of structure this was started out super DIY. And then later, now we're kind of at a point where we're thinking about like, maybe we want to become a nonprofit or something. Plant sourcing is always a challenge. I think the biggest thing is just sort of like taking the plunge and digging up, people are scared to dig up their yards, but if they have a little bit of hand holding, it really feels like a lot of people are just willing to do it. And so I think that's a great role for Wild Ones members to play. Like, I think everyone in Wild Ones knows enough to be the hand holder to say like, yes, you can do this. So I think, yeah, I would totally encourage everyone to do it. And then these are just some photos of, you know, these gardens start out very puny and kind of sad looking, but over, you know, now we've been doing it for 5 years. We're really seeing the payoff of these beautiful gardens with beautiful insects and animals coming, and we can check up on them and chat about them as we walk around the neighborhood. And you know, we've fostered this sort of network of people who know each other through this work, and it's just been really beautiful. So happy to chat more, and thanks you guys so much. Let's see, stop here.
Thank you. Wow, that's so powerful. It's so great to hear Sara and Ava talk. And it's just amazing what they've done, really, because I had a lot of help in my neighborhood, but they kind of started from scratch. It's pretty amazing. So that might be kind of fun to talk about later if anybody has questions about that, kind of the different organizational systems and supports we had. As I try to share screen, I'm techie as well, and I should be planting stuff or something. This is not what I do. Bear with me. See if I can get back here. Fingers crossed. And it's still the slideshow. Let's see. See what happens. Can you see it?
It's Altlawns.
Okay. Can you see different stuff? Okay, good. I think it's working. Oh, I had that part figured out. I knew I'd get there eventually. Oh, but it can't forward on itself. Come on now. Oh, I thought I got rid of the timer. All right. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the Longfellow community. Yep.
I still see Altlawns. Are you sure?
Okay, yeah, I know. I know what I have to do. End it. Let me see. I think I have to go out of it. Let's see if this works. Anybody want to tell a few jokes while I know what I have to do. Okay, that should still. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the Longfellow Community Wildlife Habitat Project. If you ever do this, get a much smaller name. It helps. And I, you know, I'd already planted native plants before, got my yard all filled up with native plants and so forth. And everything came out of, you know, just my love and enjoyment of wildlife, nature, but also my huge distress at hearing about it disappearing, habitat loss, et cetera, et cetera. And I still remember sitting in an auditorium in Minneapolis. The city convened a bunch of scientists, experts on butterflies, and just hearing about the steep loss of monarch populations, Conner blue butterfly, endangered. And this was way before now. Like now there's like 1 million species about to go extinct, right? This was before the mass extinction that everyone's talking about. But you could see the writing on the wall. You just see those horrible graphs, right? That the scientists have and people tracking the numbers. And that's when I knew I had to do something. And this is fine. I knew I had to do something. And what I want everyone to know is that I had no idea, right? Like, where do you even begin when you face things of that magnitude? And so I had to really look around, but I just knew in my gut I had to do something. But trust me, no idea what to do. And so I looked around. There's organizations that are way into native plants. You might know them. And there's some that are way into birds. Audubon has some really cool programs. That works just fine. There's people just into monarch butterflies, right? There's people just way into pheasants. So, I was just looking around, but I really wanted something that encompassed everything. And actually, I really like mammals too. What's wrong with mammals, okay? So I did a little Google search, and that's what brought me eventually to the National Wildlife Federation. Strangely enough, there's not much of a presence here. There's a small hunting group in St. Paul, but otherwise, not a big presence in Minnesota. So I love that encompassed everything. And after searching their website, I found out they have this thing called Garden for Wildlife, which they've had for, I think that goes back to the 70s even. And basically what this is all about is, and anybody can do this, okay? Anybody can do this in their yard. It's where you just certify your own yard as a wildlife friendly place, a sanctuary for wildlife. And you just need these 4 things. I don't know if you can see those in the 4 corners there, but it's basically you just provide a source of food, water, cover, and a place to raise young. So, and again, I'm not a scientist, so I didn't know where to start. This provided me with a format that was very easy to explain. And the beauty of their system is that you can make it as simple or as ridiculously complicated as you want. So somebody in an apartment building, if their landlord allows it, they could have a little dish of water and a bird feeder, and maybe they could certify, their apartment even, right? So, or all the way to people who just, they plant their whole yard. They have ponds and waterfalls, even in a small city lot, it's possible. So that's the beauty of that, I think, that they came up with, that you don't even have to plant a native plant necessarily. That, of course, is what I would be pushing eventually. We'll talk about that in a second. But so that's one thing, and anybody can do that in their own yard. And then one day I was talking with my neighbor, and we were working on their rain garden, and I found out that the National Wildlife Federation also has a system where you can certify the entire neighborhood. So I was talking to my neighbor, and she's like, hey, we're having an environment committee meeting next week. Let's present that. And I went there, presented it, and they voted it in instantly because they were all very into that sort of thing, very welcoming. And what that meant in my neighborhood, so this is the Longfellow neighborhood, South Minneapolis. It's, we call it Greater Longfellow because it actually includes 4 neighborhoods. There's Hiawatha, Howe, Cooper, and Longfellow proper. So we made it through the environment committee, and that means you then have to go up to the entire board of directors with our neighborhood association, the Longfellow Community Council. So you see how this, I think it's a little different from the other 2, for better and worse, I think. So we had to present. Fortunately, I think it was fate. I had to work that week. I didn't have to present it to the board. Thank goodness. My neighbor happens to be from the East Coast, and she had to go East Coast on a couple people. And so she kind of, you know, tough as nails, debated with them. But most, she said overall they were positive towards it. So they actually voted it in to have us certify our entire neighborhood. So what you do first is register your neighborhood. And to do that, you do have to have some sort of governing body to decide, yes, we are going to register with the National Wildlife Federation to accomplish this goal. So that could be, you know, it could be a city council maybe for you. For me, it was just a neighborhood association, but it had a board of directors, okay? And it could be, I think homeowners associations is a big thing that needs to be done. I think that would be very good for people who are in that situation out in the burbs, especially. So and I had to explain to the board what this would mean exactly if we did this. So it's actually a little bit of a challenge. So there's actually, you just look up whatever, you know, whatever town or neighborhood you're looking at certifying, and I hope somebody out there is thinking about it now. Look up your population and compare it to this document. And our population was around 21 to 22,000. So you just look it up there, it's hard to see. But basically that meant we had to get 225 certification points to certify. And you only get 1 point for a yard being certified. You get 3 points if you can get a common area to certify. That includes like houses of worship, businesses, and so on. I purposely excluded any public lands and parks. I wanted it to be tough and hard to accomplish this. So I wanted people to do it, you know, not our city. Like we have to do it. And then schools are tough, but it's 5 points for a school. So you can really jump ahead if you can get some schools on board. And there's a whole presentation on that alone, but so as you can see, it could take a while. I happen to know in my neighborhood, there's already a lot of people that had their yards planted up, and the environment committee has been working for years along the river gorge. So I knew I had a pretty good chance. But that's not all. So you might be thinking like, I'm not a community organizer. That's totally fine, because they lay it out for you exactly what you can do. And it's required. You got to these registration points. Basically, you form your team. You let the National Wildlife Federation know. Yeah. No. Back there and back here. And show up. Well, some people can see it. You don't really have to see it. I mean, basically what I'm saying is that they have a list of different things you have to do or can do. You don't have to do all of them. And that, again, is the beauty of their system, is that you can kind of interpret it and make it your own. So if you wanted to just focus on monarch butterflies, you could, you know. I really wanted to focus on native plants, and I knew monarchs would be a big way to connect with people. Butterflies and birds, basically, okay? You're tabling and you're talking to community, butterflies and birds, right? All right. Oh, and the new one, my love now, fireflies. Everyone loves fireflies. And that kind of, you can get fireflies, you've done everything. Because that's like native plants cover light pollution, that covers soil, it covers all sorts of things. So that's a good one. And we have them in our neighborhood, which is pretty cool. So, and then there's another, I don't know if you can see it, but there's more things. Yeah, administration goals, education goals. That was a big thing the board of directors loved, is that it was so many educational opportunities. It was all about educating and outreach. And they just love help, because that's stuff that they do all the time. And I think I'm almost up on time here, but the main thing I want to say is that all of this, it is about the education. All of this is a vehicle. Say it with me. It's a vehicle. Thank you. So this is all just an excuse to talk to people when you're tabling, when you're doing outreach, maybe talking to neighbors even. It's just an excuse like, hey, did you hear we're certifying our neighborhood, or have you certified your yard yet? And they're like, no, what is that? You know? So it's another way to talk with people. It's just an excuse. I think in Minnesota, we need excuses to talk to people sometimes, sadly enough. I know I do. So, and just talking about native plants constantly and just butterflies can be difficult. So there's some people who do not care, believe it or not, a single fly about what's going on. But when it's suddenly their city or their town that is being certified and helping the world and wildlife, then there's civic pride involved. So for some people, that's totally fine, right? Okay, let us start planting then, and you can, the board, I was like, it's not going to cost you anything and you're going to get all the credit. So, so it's a very win-win situation there, if you ask me. And again, it does help. I hope you can see this picture. This is a picture of our environment committee. And the committees will make or break you. So we're just really lucky in Longfellow. We had a really great group of people that were willing to help. And they're just really, really nice, kind, smart people. So that's it for now. After that, I created a mentorship program to get things planted in people's yards. We got the Lawns to Legumes community grant. So we can talk some more, but I think I'm up on time and we'll see what questions people have.
Is any stalling case? So does any one of you, Sarah, Daniel, Ava, have a question for someone? Otherwise, I do have to start.
Sarah? Okay. I want to follow up with Daniel right away on the mentorship program. Can you give us a couple outline of that?
I could go on for too long, but basically I had to figure out maybe I'll come back to it.
Okay.
In terms of the test, did everybody in Zoom hear the question from the?
I'm sorry, we're getting a question from the local audience and I can't answer it because I'm not on Zoom. Sarah, did you hear my question? That's how we can do it.
Or should I?
Did you hear the question I asked Daniel?
Yep.
Okay. So Sarah, while Daniel's thinking about that, I'm gonna ask you about following up. I've got two follow-ups for you. How, similar to the mentorship program, how was it difficult? Were there any hurdles for getting people to do their 2 gardens for the 1 garden they got?
That's a good question. It's one thing that I have sort of a principle is just to not really be the police. And so that was something we asked them in their form when they sign up, they have to click a box that says they agree. So there's some, they've promised, but it's kind of up to them to make it out to the 2, they are on the email list, they get the invitations, and if they come, they come, and if they don't, they don't. At first we had it just, the requirement was just come to one other one, but we weren't quite getting the volume of people necessary. And it just wasn't quite getting the snowball effect. And so having it be 2 just kind of fixed that problem.
That's awesome.
Let me try again.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try again. So for a number of years, I figured out you can give away free plants because once they establish, you get extras, right? They start appearing, volunteering. So instead of throwing away these beautiful, threatened, endangered plants, you just put on Nextdoor or whatever, say free plants, and people will come and pick them up. Well, that gave me an idea. Why not make it a little more formal and tie it into this program? So basically I had people apply to be in a Garden for Wildlife mentorship. And I found other people like me who had a lot of plants to give away, and we called them mentors. And then we had people apply to be mentees. And the big reward at first was simply to get free plants. That was it. That's all there was. And I didn't like police it, like Sarah was saying. So, you know, people may have shared a cultivar here and there, you know, or a Mexican torch sunflower, you know. So I learned a lot. I mean, you just learn so much from this stuff. And but I realized I really need to give some guidance because, again, I wanted to push the native plants and the habitat a little more. And in these little small yards, you need to really get those keystone species and the native species to help wildlife. So I started teaching a course, and it got better every year. I'm still, you know, trying to improve it every year. And so last year I had people sit through 4 different classes before I assigned them to a mentor. So I was really mean. Sarah is so much nicer. And so we got to hear from you too, how you get plants in the ground. How do you do it?
I give them away.
Yeah.
But I started mass producing plants as a water steward when I couldn't help with projects and I was taking care of my mom. So my donation to the water steward program was giving away plants and thousands of plants. And I also did, I was with a church out in Minnetonka that was changing over their land and did a project with students on winter sowing, or kids on winter sowing, and that produced thousands of plants as well. And so I had a really, in my back pocket, I had plus my grandfather that I never knew was a nursery owner. So I think that it's in my blood. And so because COVID was present, we didn't do a lot of group activities, but when people would come and pick up their free plant or two, I'd walk around my yard, talk about things, ask them about their plant, talk about jumping worms, yes. And so that's how I did plants. And this year I'm hoping to have, I have soilless, I'm not using soil because of jumping worms, and a lot of winter sowing, which for those of you that may not know, it's jugs that are put out in milk jugs that are empty. You put native seeds in and let them stratify or get cold, warm in the winter time. And then you end up with lots of seeds for the spring. And I'm hoping to have workshops where we're up potting together and talking together and sharing, and then people can go home with plants from that workshop.
Do we have any other questions, or just keep going?
You can keep asking or keep talking.
Somebody, yeah. Be sure to put in your questions.
I have a question.
Oh, yep.
Daniel, HOA, is that, were you saying that's a government body that's acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
and they rule stronger than
Okay.
any, well, you know, yeah, they're very strongly ruled. I've heard in these, some of these suburban HOAs.
Okay.
Something I want to mention too is that I had to make a program that worked for an introvert. So like, I realized like introverts, their power is they can talk one-on-one with people really well. Extroverts can talk in general, you know, this is generally speaking, that's how I think of it. They can speak to large groups. So that's kind of why the mentorship was the way it was. Sarah is so much friendlier than I am because she can bring these huge groups together. So I would say, Sarah, you're a little more extroverted, I think, than I am. I like that one-on-one, that mentorship, you know, it's just a different model. Yeah. And I think, you know, so in the end, I needed extroverts, believe me. They would be like, oh, we're certifying now? Oh, and then they'd get like their whole neighborhood to go on a tour and certify each of their houses once they figured out what was happening. So you needed everybody ultimately.
I did see a question go by, and there are probably ones before that, but I'm just going to quickly answer and respond to the question I saw about soilless medium. I'm mixing cocoa fiber, peat moss, even though I don't like using it, but I'm using that, and some calcium, because the cocoa fiber leaches the calcium. So I added that in, and it's there's one other thing I'm putting, perlite I'm putting in. And my most recent batch, I did put vermiculite as well. And then it can dry out quickly, and I put a little Dr. Bronner in the water as I'm adding it. This is based on Julia's had it in her garage, a mix. And I went to the store to buy it, and I went, I've got half of this stuff at home already. So I'm mixing it up myself.
And I just wanted to add in that there was a question about jumping worms, which Sara has answered online, and that that's why they're not using soil or and they're growing up their own plants, is to control the jumping worms, for those who can't read that. And then I wanted to also let you know that Julia Vanetta, one of our members in the back, has workshops and talks that are on jumping worms and how to contain it and how to do their relief. So if we keep an eye on the Twin Cities website, we'll be able to find out what her calendar is. So do stay tuned. And with that, I think we can open it up for questions from the audience. And I can also start it out with one particularly for Sara. Do you have ways, or have you thought about how to use this model of crop mob in other parts of what you're doing, the project, or things that you need? I think it's a fascinating idea to use ideas from agriculture. I think it may be one of the bridges that we can have from urban to rural, but it's a wonderful model to practice. Have you done anything other than planting and having large groups do that?
Ooh, sorry, that was a little hard to hear. Could you say the main question part again?
I was just wondering if you could expand the use of crop mobs for other needs on the project.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, there's like a lot of ways to do sort of mutual aid, or to kind of like let resources, come from a lot of different places and circulate around. So like when we started growing our own plants from seed, we got a big donation of pots from a landscape architect who lived in the neighborhood, or things like that. I think at one point, then we were also setting up like mini nurseries, different people who had space in their backyard to grow the plants out, so that it wasn't all concentrated in one person's yard. And that was like another way to kind of like get buy-in. So, and yeah, just we had a whole bunch of people kind of doing different things. Like somebody designed our logo, somebody, like different people who would be willing to table and stuff. So I'm not sure if that's exactly from agriculture, but I do think sort of under the general rubric of mutual aid, there's like just so many things to, share in that way.
Okay. So I was just wondering if you all, with the experience that you all have starting these programs, if you were to do it again, what would you do differently, or would you? Any one of you that feels an answer to that one can start. Ava, how about you?
I don't know that there's anything I do that differently, just because my I was limited by caring for my mom. So I think that I started small and I started slow, and that's what I needed to do. So believe in yourself. That's it. Just really trust your process and trust that your neighbors and the people you connect with are going to add and augment and be willing to roll with that. And also keep track of what your focus is. Like, one of the things that I need to do is not say yes to everything. So we have a lot of parks that need help. And I think, Sarah, you had said this too. No, you, Daniel, but my focus is residential. And I really want to help residents, and I want to teach people how to do this and overcome. One of the things that I'm getting off topic, but I'm gonna do it anyway. One of the things that is my skill, is my history, is that I lived with developmental or complex PTSD, and that informs my community work. It's like, I know what it's like not to be able to buy something, not to have 5 cents. I know what it's like to lose a house. I know what it's like to not have the energy to do something, not to be able to drive 40 miles for a nice picnic and pick up plants. And I think that's important as we work with people to meet them where they are. I mean, some people can do all that stuff and meet them. I just was talking with Alicia today about that. Some people do have the money for just paying for the whole flat of plants or the oak rain barrel, but some people need to do the workshop for $35 and be helped through that workshop. And I love that, because we all can meet each other where we are and help each other.
Wonderful.
So that's not doing stuff different, but it's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, well, and I'm the same way. I wouldn't do it differently because I had to do it that way. And it took me a long time to figure out some things. Just one thing that was interesting though, is I thought tabling would be really boring and horrible. And I just dutifully did it, but it turns out it's actually really fun to talk to your neighbors. So don't be afraid of it. It's really fun. Don't ask them what their favorite bird or butterfly is. Because they would have been all excited looking at the project, and then they get embarrassed if they can't name a butterfly or a bird. So that's one thing I learned. I wouldn't do that again. Lead it a little bit differently. They want to talk about it, but you got to kind of guide them into the conversation a little bit. Safely. Sarah?
Yeah.
Does it cost money to certify your garden? Yeah, it costs $25 if you do it directly. If you do it online, I think it's $30 with the convenience fee. And you don't have to get a sign, but if you want a sign, now you're talking big bucks. That could be $50 to $100 for a sign. And a sign is a great idea because people are going to wonder what the heck you're doing to your yard and to their neighborhood. So having that sign just tells people like, oh, okay, you're doing something for wildlife or for butterflies. And you hope that's enough. They'll get it. So.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah, just to respond to that previous question about doing, what would you do differently? I just wanted to echo, I guess Ava specifically and Dan too, but like that, I think we definitely like our process, our the way our system evolved over time, but I think we couldn't have known a lot of how it needed to be until we did it. So I think that is really true, that you can just start kind of anywhere, like start where you're at and see how it goes. Like you'll figure it out as you go, because it's going to be different. Every different neighborhood, it's going to be different depending on the interests of yourself and the people around you. So I don't really have like a one main thing that I would do differently. I think it just had to be like kind of a weird plunge into the unknown. But I wanted to, there was this question in the chat that I also wanted to ask you guys about somebody said, it was about how, do people stay engaged and help each other over the first weedy years? And in general, I was wondering how you guys in your neighborhoods have dealt with this sort of question about like ongoing maintenance and knowledge, because that is something that is sort of arising now as a question. Like there's a learning curve of how to take care of a garden if you've never done it before, and especially these native plant gardens. I think for us, like we did sort of have a dual thing going on where like we plant the garden and then people get back in touch and be like, hey, can you come and tell me if this is a weed, or like, do I need to mulch again, or things like that. And so like that was something I didn't really anticipate. Like sort of like we're trying to like keep making more and more gardens, but also people do still need information and help to figure out like what they need to do to maintain their gardens. And that, so that continues to be kind of like a question about like, oh, how do we deal with that? I also think this is another area that's like ripe for people with gardening experience, like Wild Ones members to plug in and be, you know, be able to offer advice in their neighborhoods. But how have you guys encountered that question of like the maintenance and sort of like help after the installation?
I'm definitely out at that point. No, just kidding. I direct them to Wild Ones as soon as I can. For sure, right? Honestly, where else are they gonna go? And the idea was to build enough people that know about it in the community, the mentors and the mentees. So, and the idea is the mentees would eventually become mentors to a couple of people, you know, on and on. In reality, and in real estate, I know that after 7 years in the cities, that's usually when somebody moves. And unfortunately, because a lot of people don't know about what's going on with the native plants and the pollinators, first thing they do when they move in is get rid of all those things, put it back to turf grass, thinking they can just, you know, either they don't like the native plants or they think, let's just wipe the slate clean, let's start over, we'll figure it out later. So it's really tough, really tough. So, and so many times people will fund projects with the city. This is a pet peeve. They'll fund a project to put in plants and they will not fund money to maintain it. That is so frustrating. So it goes to weeds and then somebody finally just mows it down, you know. So that's absolutely what the mentorship and the training was about, is to get people and the support from the community and neighbors helping neighbors. All that said, I'm looking now towards trees, because I think if we plant some good keystone native trees, oaks, birch trees, you know, all the ones Talamy recommends, people love trees. You can really get people with trees. They understand if there's a shade tree in their yard and they're not going to cut it down. It also costs $3,000 to $5,000 to cut it down. But people like trees. They're going to keep those there. So that's kind of something I'm kind of focusing on next, I think, as is actually Ava and I both had the same idea, like separately, and we were both thinking about it. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I wanted to get people, again, Richfield is economically similar to North Minneapolis. So, and also our, on the heat map, we're also really high, and parts of Bloomington are too. So I wanted to get more trees, shrubs in. I looked at Minnesota DNR and they were only for public land. So I'm sourcing seedlings. They're small, like you receive a free, what is it? Arbor Day tree. So I'm doing shrubs. I think there are 7 kind of shrubs and 1 kind of tree, small tree. And I think that is a really important thing. I also see it as a sourcing. Where I've run into the issue that the city is replacing a lot of trees for the emerald ash borer, and we're getting non-native trees on that list for the most part. There's a handful of native trees. So that's also I don't know. Do you have a farm that you're growing things at? Sarah, did I hear that you're starting to grow things outside of the cities? Because I think that we are needing more sourcing for native plants, native trees, native shrubs.
Yeah, we
And-
did.
Yeah, go ahead.
We did, going into 2020, we did grow our biggest batch of plants out at a farm, kind of actually because it was winter and we needed a space to hold the people. But I think if we would have started a little sooner, we could have just done it in a garage. Like that, this year we did it in somebody's garage kind of thing. So I don't think we actually needed all the space for the plants, but we needed it for a space to like be inside.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we got time for one more question.
Okay.
And it can come from the audience, it can come from our online group, or it can come from any one of us. So, all right, Leslie.
Should I do it in the mic, please? So Daniel, you're certified. I don't know if you know, explain that.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. Yeah, we certified last August. Yes, we did it.
You're the only one in the state of Minnesota.
Yes, yeah.
And how many years did it take you to do this?
Pure guess, I thought maybe it would take 5 years, and it actually turned out to be 5 years.
Yes. And so.
And it really helped, I gotta add this, it really helped to have somebody write an article about your project. Leslie Pilgrim, if you know about her, she did an article on it. She was the first one to do it with her neighborhood greening project. And it helped a lot to get attention, get word out.
That's not exactly what I asked.
Wow,
But thank you.
Needed to be said.
And so if anyone wants to model what you did, can they contact you and how would they do that?
Yeah, please do. You can Google the project. We have a free, a Google web page. But yeah, please email me if anybody wants advice or wants help going to your board or your city or your town, or maybe we need to partner. Maybe we need to go for the whole city now. Or St. Paul, we have some St. Paul people here tonight as well. So whole Twin Cities could be certified. That would take us many years, but it's not about finishing really. It's about, just doing it, having an excuse again to talk to people. So, but yeah, please reach out to me. My email is dschultz6@comcast.net, dschultz6@comcast.net. Maybe I'll put it in the chat or something.
I think that would be good for all of you, if you're willing to have people contact you
Oh, yeah.
and work with you, to put it in the chat so that even those that are here can see that. And I think with that, we've come to a close. I just can't tell you how excited I am about what you all have been doing, and that it shows the power of one. You all just started, and look what happened with your neighbors. And the changes that you have made are just incredible. So I also want to thank our tech support, because we've had a lot. Robert Happelvig and Holly Wildarski. Robert is here setting up everything. Holly's this job, because this was really complicated. And then last of all, I hope to see you next month at our April meeting. And I can't believe it's already getting into April. So with that, thank you for coming and staying with us. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.